Hi, everybody. This is Eve Harrow, and you're listening to Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. You're listening to this probably on July 22nd, 2018, the 10th day of Av, 5778. I'm taping it, though, right before Shabbat on the 20th, and actually the 8th of Av. I did not want to either tape a show or have anybody who works for the station, meaning Ben and Tabitha and everyone else who works so hard to get these shows out, have to work on what is a fast day, the 9th of Av, even though really technically the 9th of Av going to fall where I'm sitting today on Shabbat, but we do not fast on Shabbat. Shabbat is that important that except for Yom Kippur, which is Shabbat Shabbaton, like the Shabbats of the Shabbats, we do not fast on Shabbat, and therefore the actual fast of the 9th of Av was pushed off until Sunday. And of course, it's the most serious fast of the year. It commemorates a lot of rotten things that happened to the Jewish people over the ages. But I've got so much on my head in addition to the 9th of Av. Since I last taped a show, I hope you enjoyed last week's interview with Yoram Ra'anan. I had pre-taped it a few days earlier because I was very busy. I knew I was going to be busy on Sunday guiding the Jewish Women's Renaissance Project. So since the last time I was really behind this mic, a lot has been going on. There's a lot like flying around my brain. Going to try and make some sense of it and share it with you. So that's, what I do when I like free associate. This is going to be one of those shows. So as I sit here, there's a lot of talk going on now about the law that Israel passed yesterday, that Israel is the state of the Jewish nation. A lot to say about that, but nothing that I can say better than Eugene Kontorovich did. I highly recommend that you read his editorial in Friday's Wall Street Journal. And I'm like obviously, and I imagine a lot of you are feeling the same way, like kind of duh. Okay, yes, Israel is the state of the Jews, and everybody's getting all bent out of shape, and so many people are saying this is Israel's slide into apartheid and racism and all those words that are so easily bandied about Israel. And I'm thinking about this and thinking to myself, remember that awful Zionism is racism that was passed by the UN and later on rescinded? Well, is that back? I mean, all the people who are against the law that Israel passed this week, what would they have voted on Zionism as racism? Because basically this is a Zionist statement. And by saying that it's racist, so that means that the people who are against what Israel did this week would have voted for Zionism as racism. And there's all these questions that just keep like running around in my brain because it really seems like there are no, excuse the expression, shades of gray anymore, especially when it comes to identity politics. You can't be tribal anymore. You cannot say that there are a certain group of people that matter to you more than other people do. Not to say that they are better or smarter. Like, I love my kids more than I love other people's kids. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That is now out there. I'm not going to retract that. I love my kids more than I love other people's kids. Is that a bad thing or a good thing? I'm not saying my kids are smarter, better, more intelligent, more beautiful, or anything else. I'm not comparing them to anybody else, but they're mine. And therefore, I love them more than I love other people's children. And now if you say that that's the wrong thing, then maybe I've completely misread what a mother is supposed to be. And I look around the world and I think like, what the heck is going on here? If you say that your people matter to you and you're not putting down anyone else, you're just saying that your people matter to you enough that you should have your own space and your own language and your own little area. Is that supposed to be offensive to everybody else? Why? Where did that happen? And why? Why is it that any kind of statement of, not that I'm special in the sense of better, and I keep reiterating that because I think that there's something that's gotten like totally mixed up here. You can't just belong to a group anymore. There has to be a total muddying of the waters. And I don't think, and I understand some of the background of that. Everybody is so afraid of wars. Everybody's so afraid of, nationalism. Nationalism has become this catchphrase for going to war against everybody else. And we've talked about this before. Nazi Germany was not nationalistic. Nazi Germany was imperialistic, as is Iran, as is Russia, as is Turkey of today. Okay, that's the danger is imperialism. Nationalism should not be dangerous if it means that you just want to promote the well-being and the future of your people. And that if your people are threatened, then you will do what you can to protect your people. That is supposed to be a good thing. That is supposed to be a basic thing. And we all are a mix. I would say, at least I am, and I would say that most Jews, because we've gotten thrown out of so many different places, are a mix. At our core, we have our religion and our peoplehood, the Judaism part. But those of us, and I see it here in Israel, who come from different cultures, so we bring that into the mix. And we, as individuals, need to pick and choose what it is that we like about that, our cultural background, and keep that going. For example, I have a German background. Now, on the one hand, the Germans, not the Nazi Germans, I'm talking about the German personality, can be an incredible personality. You ask them to do anything, they've done it yesterday. Reliable, efficient, on time, just the kind of people really that you want on your side, if you want to get anything done in a positive sense. Again, let's leave aside what the Germans did with all those wonderful elements. They turned it into being an incredible killing machine. Okay, you can take your genius and your efficiency and use it for the wrong thing. But I'm not talking about the German personality and like what I inherited and what I grew up with. Okay, so you can take it to the good side. On the other side, the Germans not known for being incredibly warm or for being incredibly emotional. And is that something that I want to incorporate into my personality again? That's a decision that I'm going to make. All right. So we all have within us the cultural things or the personality elements that have come down, but we should have some kind of greater affiliation, a greater patriotism, if you will. Has that also become like a really nasty word? I guess it has for the people who, at the football games who won't like stand for the anthem. So, but you can't put aside the fact that you're upset with the country on certain elements. It has to then bleed into, no, now I'm not going to be loyal to the country at all. What is happening here? What is happening to the world that everybody has gotten so extreme? What I did last week is I started to say I was guiding for the Jewish Women's Renaissance Project, which I absolutely love. 200 women. Well, actually, there were 600 women, but there were different groups that were going on. But I was with 200 different women, 3 other tour guides. We each had a bus of 50 women every day. We bounced from bus to bus every day. We were with them for 4 or 5 days and went to different places around the country. I've done it quite a few times. I'm sure that some of you, if you've been listening for a while, you've heard me talk about it. It's a marvelous experience. It's loosely framed. It's Birthright for mothers. It's much, much more than that. It's bringing in Jewish women. I think the ones I was with this time were all from North America, and just exposing them to Judaism, to Jewish feminism, to Israel in a way that they weren't familiar with, so that they understand that they're, or hopefully get excited by the fact that they're part of something bigger and something that for many people has been put out there as, if not a negative, as certainly like antithetical to what women really are, which makes me crazy. All right. And I think that Western feminism has not just actually to a great degree destroyed a lot of what women are all about, but has also to a great degree destroyed a lot of what men are about. So that's a whole other issue that I've talked about at other times. But the Jewish feminism or Torah feminism is so powerful and so incredible. And that's part of what we have the women here get exposed to. So, it was up at Masada in like ridiculous 110-degree weather and talking about that story, which is a very difficult story for those of you who don't know. One of the last stands, it's considered the last stand, but it's not really, during the revolt against the Romans, 73-74, the temple's already been destroyed in the year 70. And on this lonely little fortress, way, way down in the Judean desert, at the very edge of the Dead Sea, a fortress that Herod built, the Jews have a major battle against the Romans. And then when the Romans finally conquer the mountain and come up, the Jews have killed themselves rather than fall into Roman hands. And it is a difficult story. It's a difficult place to guide, because the only source on that is Josephus, the Jewish historian from that time, and he wasn't even there. He heard it secondhand. It's not mentioned by the Romans, maybe because it turns out to have been somewhat of embarrassment for them that they threw 3 legions there and didn't even have the victory of taking the Jews captive. captive or killing them. It's not mentioned in the Jewish sources, possibly because suicide, maybe, and that's the traditional explanation, suicide is considered, you can't do it. All right. You are not allowed to decide when you die. If suicide is considered against everything that the Torah values are, unless maybe you are faced with avodah zarah or idol worship, or being put in situations that would cause you to do things that you wouldn't be you if you did them. For example, what the Romans might have done with women or to women, or forcing us, into paganism. And then that becomes a very big question, which I don't want to get into right now, but certainly when you're guiding Masada, these are a lot of the issues that come up. All right. But I guide Masada a little differently about the life that was there. I'm astonished that they managed to live there for so many years together without killing each other before the Romans showed up. And that's the side that really fascinates me, the side that there are mikvaot there are ritual baths there, which means they were having children and they were still tithing to go down to the temple. They didn't know the end of the story, that they were going to die. And they were all about life, and that's what we are today. But on that day, the Masada day, the women also went camel riding. And I was looking at the camels, and the camels are, if you've never really seen a camel, they're very unusual animal. They're built to do what it is that they do, which is cross the deserts. Hashem did a magnificent job on the camel. Also have eyelashes that any woman would just love. But camels are a mess, because camels, you watch them, they pee on themselves. Okay, there's no other way of putting it. Camels pee on themselves. Now, they are built to do that because you want to have any liquid you can in the tremendous heat of the desert, and then, to help cool them off, basically. And I'm looking at the camels and I'm thinking, okay, essentially women, if left to our own devices, would do the same. I mean, that's how we're built. There's no way around it. Okay, if we were going to do that, if we're going to pee standing up, we're also going to make a mess. But fortunately, we have a brain in our heads and we've got a way of, being neat. And so we sit, and that's how that works. And nothing but nothing, and no amount of feminism and no amount of, being a male wannabe is going to change the very physical structure of females, which is that's where that is. Okay, it doesn't work standing up. All right. So that's the way it is. All right. And I'm not going to fight about that, because that's the way I'm built. And there's other things that I'm not going to fight about either. I'm going to try and go with the strength of being a woman instead of trying to be I guess a male wannabe in so many ways. And I'm confused by the shrillness and the anger that I see among so many women, instead of just embracing who we are. And the same thing, again, when it comes to this, you want to call it identity politics or whatever it is, about ourselves. You can so often apply what we think about and what we worry about as individuals on a bigger picture to nations. Okay, so again, this is what I can do. This is what I can't do. And so when it comes, let's say, to Israel, coming back to that again, coming back to who we are, I'm not putting anybody else down. I'm not saying, who we aren't, but I belong to a people that I'm very proud to belong to, a people who by any rational means should not be standing. And here we are. And I believe not every Jew will believe that, but I do believe, and a tremendous number of Jews do believe that we are back here with God's help, but also, especially in the last over century or so, working very hard to create this state. Part of what bothers me tremendously about the mentality of diaspora Judaism, and now that I've lived here for 30 years, I see it even more starkly, is a sense of helplessness, is a sense of, when you're living in somebody else's house, there's only so much you can do. And of course, it culminates in one of the other places that I guided was Yad Vashem. So it culminates in the horror of the Holocaust and 6 million Jews being killed because we could not really defend ourselves. There were individuals who did, and there were uprisings and there were rebellions, but we could not defend ourselves. And that's the greatness of having our own country now and our own army, is that we can do that. But it's more than that. It even affects, let's say, the holiday of Hanukkah, right? Which is very much about the miracle of the little vial of oil that lasts 8 days, but it was really a tremendous military victory. And I understand why the rabbis closed that down because they didn't want us to rebel anymore, because they knew that we were going into a long situation. I don't know if they knew how long, all right, where we were not going to have the means to be able to win. We were not going to be able to have the means to fight for sovereignty and carve out a space for ourselves after the failed Bar Kokhba revolt, for sure, in the 2nd century. And we were just going to have to lay low for a while and make it through. And we did. We laid low for a long, long time. We didn't all make it through. There aren't that many Jews in the world today because of not just the Holocaust, but because of the Inquisition and because of crusades and because of pogroms and because of all kinds of things that have happened, many of which are commemorated on the 9th of Av, but not only, right? But those of us who managed to be now living in a time period where not only are we still standing and surviving, but we are giving things to the world that the world needs, and we are so incredible and so needed right now in the Western world that I can't see it in any way but through a theological prism and through a way of saying that, wow, Hashem brought us home in order to be able to do this, not just to worry about our survival, but to be able to now give. And it's an incredible thing to be a part of. And why do we have to be embarrassed about it? And why do we have to say that that's racist? There's one country in the world, one, where Hebrew is the official language. One. The rebirth of Hebrew as a spoken language is nothing short of a miracle. So there can be one country, but that's the only official language. And people are all upset, but 20% of the country are Arabs and they're insulted. You know what? There's 1 million Jews here from the former Soviet Union who came when the Berlin Wall came down into the 80s, beginning of the 90s, whose mother tongue is Russian. So maybe we should also, why aren't they complaining that Russian? There's a lot of ultra-Orthodox Jews who mainly on a day-to-day basis speak Yiddish. There's the Ethiopian Jews or the Amharic. Nobody is saying to all those different people, you can't speak their language. All we're saying is that there is one language in one country that is special to that country and unique to that country, and therefore it deserves a special mention. Okay? Nobody's saying to people who here in Israel who speak Arabic to not speak Arabic. And by the way, you can speak Arabic in many different countries all around the Middle East and also probably certain parts of Detroit and Paris as well. Right? Nobody's putting down Arabic. Nobody's putting down the other languages. We're just saying that Hebrew is special to this country and that the Jewish nation is special to this country, and nobody is saying to throw everybody else out or that they shouldn't get the same basic rights that all the Jews here. And as I've said before, there is also a certain advantage for the Arab minority here in Israel because they don't have all the responsibilities that the Jews have here, i.e. going into the army and national service. So you really want to have that discussion with me? Bring it on. One of the Torah lessons, because after I was done with the JWRP group, I went and spent a few days here in where I live in Gush Etzion in Alon Shvut, what's called the Imei Yun in Tanach. It's every 9 days. It's become, people come from around the world, not just here in Israel, to these 5 days of intense Tanach learning from some of the best teachers that we have. And so I wasn't able to go the entire time again because I was guiding and had other things to do, but I went to as many lessons as I could. And it is just a joy. It is just a joy for me to immerse myself in the Torah, which becomes more and more relevant as the years go by. And one of the lessons has to do with the 9th of Av. And, you know, I talk about this all the time, right? The sin of the spies, and how what I do as a tour guide is try and turn back the sin of the spies, which is, if you will, the original sin of the 9th of Av, right? The spies coming into the land, bad report, seeing the huge bunches of grapes as, oh my God, we're not going to be able to conquer, feeling scared instead of, wow, this is awesome. And therefore, that whole generation dies in the desert and isn't allowed into the land. So Rav Yaakov Meidan, who's one of the heads of the Har Etzion Yeshiva, so I was in a Torah lesson of his, and he was talking about the sin of the spies. And he was actually saying that it's not the sin of the spies. It really should be called the sin of the tourists. Okay. And in Parashat Shlach Lecha, in the Torah portion of Shlach Lecha, where the sin of the spies is discussed, the word rigul, the word spies, isn't used. It's latur, which is the same word in English, latur, but it's really, to scout out or to tour the land. Okay, they didn't come in as spies. Later on, because of what they did, they are considered spies. All right, and the same thing can apply to some of the people who come to Israel now, like those, I'm not going to call them well-meaning because they're not well-meaning in the least, the kids who came on the Birthright trip and then walked off in the middle of the Birthright trip and said, no, we're not being told the truth. We want to go now and hear the Palestinian side and the occupation and how can Israel do this? So same exact thing, right? They came as tourists. But if you look back at them, you can call them spies, or you can call them traitors, you can call them what you want. But tourists, they're not. What was so interesting, what Rav Meidan said, is not really so much the fear. So we focus on the fear factor, right? The 12 come back, we'll call them spies just because that's what the usual definition is. The 12 spy tourists come back. 10 out of the 12 give this scary report. Only Caleb and Joshua say no, and it's okay. So Rav Meidan said something very interesting. He said, the fear isn't the issue. It's reasonable to be afraid. It is. It's reasonable to say, wow, like this looks tough. Okay, what are we going to do here? What was not reasonable was what came afterwards. And what came afterwards was, we want to go back to Egypt. Now, going back to Egypt is more than just saying, like, we want to go back to Egypt. It means we want to undo Sinai. We want to give back, because going back to Egypt means going back into the cradle of idolatry, going back into the cradle of also like really ridiculous sexual practices like incest, which we know from DNA studies of mummies and others and the historical things is exactly what was going on in Egypt. And that's why one of the main reasons that we had to get out. So that's what that means. Going back to Egypt doesn't just mean I'm afraid of conquering the land. It means I want to go back and I want to undo the miracles and the birthright, the real birthright that we were given in Sinai. Okay, beyond the seven, what we call the seven Noahide laws, the laws of humanity that are given to us after the flood, right? And that we have to keep. The Jewish people were chosen at Sinai to get another 606, okay, to really push the world, to push people to becoming greater than just basics, okay? Basics is already good, better than animals, but it's not enough. It's not enough. And to really bring Hashem into the world, bring God into the world and make ourselves holy, there's more things that we have to do. The Shabbat, which is probably the ultimate in our covenant with God, but other kinds of things as well. So according to Rav Meidan, saying that we want to go back to Egypt, like get us out of here, is much, much more than just fear. And first of all, that's not an option. Okay, as you'll note, that's not what happens. Instead, what happens is they die in the desert. They're not up to the task of accepting this, getting the Torah, and accepting the responsibility of bringing mankind up to another level. It doesn't mean that they go back to the disaster. It means that that's it. They're, at some point within a normal lifespan, they're done. There was another lesson that he gave. They were also on the Garden of Eden. So the Garden of Eden, he and Rav Benny Lau, with whom I have an interview that I'll play in a few minutes, both spoke about the Garden of Eden. So the Garden of Eden, and I felt this way for a long time, and there's certainly great sages and much greater thinkers than I'm not even anywhere on that list, who feel that the Garden of Eden, the story of the Garden of Eden is actually an analogy. It didn't exactly happen that way. It's a lesson that we're given. And the Garden of Eden is really a way of describing childhood, right? Because what was the emphasis there? What do we see about them, about their personalities in the Garden of Eden? They were naked, but they didn't know, like they didn't have that element of shame. They didn't know, right from wrong, and they didn't have to do anything in order to be fed, which is like, that's exactly what happens when you're a child. Right? People are providing you with your food and with your basic needs. If you're, little kids walking around naked, they don't understand that the ideas of modesty that we have now. And they also don't know right from wrong, which is what we as parents, of course, want to teach them in terms of their personal safety. If you run into the street, a bus will hit you, but also in terms of behavior. Don't take your sister's toys. Don't pull your brother's hair. Those things that will cause us to be creatures that can live in society and live with others. So the Garden of Eden is essentially childhood, and we were never meant to stay there. That was never meant to be the permanent situation to live in the Garden of Eden. It was supposed to be temporary. What made the story so tragic is that we leave there in a way that we didn't have to leave there. We leave there with God angry with us. And if you think about it, in terms of parenting, and so much of the way I think is framed through parenting and through what I have learned from my children and from the tremendous experience and gift that I was given in being a mother and in having a lot of children, is that is our choice in terms of raising our children. It's not so much of a choice in terms of how we were raised. That was more up to our parents, and I'll leave that for now. But in terms of raising our children, they are going to grow up. They are going to leave our house. Do they leave in anger? Do they leave with that sense that, they did something really wrong? And obviously what happened in the Garden of Eden really was wrong, right? But do they, what's the relationship like with us when they leave? And what's the relationship like when they left the Garden of Eden? And Hashem is disappointed in them. And it's only after the murder with Enosh, which means humanity in Hebrew, where you have a different idea of what humanity is. So these were just, you can see what was going on here this week in terms of the Torah. These were just some of the ideas, and I've just given you just a little bit of pieces of the things that don't necessarily give answers, but raise a lot of questions and get me to think, which, as you know, is what I like to do and what I throw on you guys. And I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not really sorry, but that's how it is. But, one of the other things that was interesting to get back again to this sin of the tourists, if you will, which I hope that none of my tourists come out doing. Now, that's another thing that I put on myself, that my tourists should not have those feelings when they leave, is what they say about being a grasshopper in their eyes, right? That when they went into the land of Israel, they were grasshoppers in the eyes of the people that were here. That is such a telling verse, okay? Seeing ourselves through other people's eyes would tell you really what you think about yourself, okay? If we felt that we were like grasshoppers in their eyes, maybe we weren't. But that becomes the predetermined idea, right? That fulfilling that, you can fulfill that idea. I'm searching here for a phrase that I'm not finding, right? If you think about it, then you kind of make it so. And so if they felt that way, then maybe they were like grasshoppers in the other eyes. And I refuse to do that as an Israeli and as a Jew in 2018, 57, 78. I'm not a grasshopper in anybody's eyes. I'm a sign of Hashem in the world. I'm a sign that he doesn't break his promises, that he brought his people home. Just read the prophets and see what they have to say. Read them carefully, though. On Tisha B'Av, on Saturday night, on Sunday, when we read from Jeremiah, when we read the book of Eicha, read it carefully, because this isn't a promise without conditions. Right? When Jeremiah writes the book of Eicha right before the destruction of the first temple. And the people are saying to him, no, this covenant is everlasting and God will never break it no matter what we do. And Jeremiah is saying, oh no, it's not like that. We have what we're supposed to do also. And if you don't believe me, look what happened in Shiloh where the tabernacle was. All right? It happened before. The tabernacle being the precursor to the temple, and Shiloh was destroyed. So it's not just an open check that we can use and abuse the relationship with Hashem. So the fact that I have come back to the land of Israel, my people have come home again, for me is a sign that we are doing something right. We're doing a lot of things right. And that otherwise Hashem would not have gone to such extraordinary measures to bring his people home. And so that is really, really good news. But it also means that we have to keep our eye on the ball, if you will. That even being here now, we have to understand that there are certain things that could perhaps cause this place to be destroyed. I don't sit here with all the confidence, and that's why we have to make sure that Iran doesn't go nuclear, and we have to make sure that even the people who are like pro BDS, who, and it just came out last week as well, that the person who founded the BDS movement, it wasn't about like this naive idea of making Israelis better and stopping the settlement movement, but it was a very clear, a thought out way of trying to destroy Israel. So the fronts are, we have many fronts, all right? There's the war front that has to be dealt with. There's the world opinion that does have to be dealt with. There's the media coming after Israel. There are, unfortunately, still the spies among us, which is my biggest heartbreak, the people among us who are still trying to undermine us being here. And we can't just say, well, but we're okay now, all right? Like to hark back, let's say, to Isaiah, because Isaiah, during his time and Hezekiah's time, there is a major miracle, and the Assyrians do go away, and the temple isn't destroyed. But cut to about 115 years later, and with Jeremiah, and it is. And so this is a balance, this life that I'm leading here, and that many of you are also involved with, whether you're actually here and leading a similar life to I am, or whether you're out there and listening to this, which means that you understand that something bigger than all of us is happening here, and you are a part of all that, whether you're a Jew or a Christian. You are a part of all that, because the world is at some serious crossroads here, really serious. What's happening now is not funny in any possible form. And I've spoken about this, and I will continue to speak about this. This is so similar to how the Roman Empire ended. Okay, panet kirkas, bread and circuses, entertainment and cheap food, and people not paying attention to what's really happening, and people latching on to certain ideas, not sometimes out of naivete, sometimes out of like really evil thinking, and trying to destroy humanity. And if we, those of us who are a little bit aware of what's happening here, those of us who are a little bit grounded in this, once again, comes back to the Tanach. It's amazing. It always comes back to the Tanach, because the Tanach is not a book of secrets. It's not a hidden book. And Judaism is not a hidden religion. We are mandated to read the Torah. We're not told, no. It's like a book that only certain priests or certain whatevers can read, as so many other religions are. And one lesson that I went to years ago about Leviticus, about Vayikra, is that, okay, we got it. The priest does this and the priest does that, and he sprinkles here and he goes in there. Why do we need to be told all this? Because even in the Holy of Holies, where only one man is on one day of the year, we still know exactly what he's doing. There are no secrets in Judaism. And when people talk about the Bible and say, but David this and this one that, and all these like personalities in the Bible, and they did this and they did that, yes. And we wrote that down. Not only did we write that down and didn't bury it and say, no, we want to forget it. We are a people that talks about and has a holiday about coming out of slavery, not nobility. You know, the Medicis in Italy. So it's kind of cloudy where the Medicis come from. So there's all kinds of theories about where they come from. But who the heck is going to say, yeah, I come from slaves, right? I'm proud of it. I come from slaves. God brought me out. And here we're on the move. And we're doing things. And not only do we not like hide it, like, no. We'll just make up some other story and we'll hide the real deal. We are mandated not only to learn it, but to teach it to as many people as we can, and learn it and then learn it again and then learn it again. All right. And spend days and careers and generations going over the same book, finding new wisdom in the same book. That's unbelievable, because the Tanakh is not an easy book to read, not on any level, about relationships and leadership and parenting and, oh my God, all the way through. It's like one big mess up after the other, really. And not just the book of Judges, which was another great Torah lesson that I went to, that is only really the first Judges. I'll segue on this for a second. We have this idea that the book of Judges has this pattern, right? We sin. God sends somebody who, is not good to us or enslaves us. We cry out. God sends a judge or some leader to take us out. We win. We repent, and things are quiet. Repeat. Okay. But it's not like that really in the book of Judges. The book of Judges that happens just for like the first 7 judges. But the last judges, Samson, Jephthah, and of course the awful story of Pilegish Begiva, the concubine in the Giva, God's already not playing this dance anymore with us. He's not dancing with us. This is Benny Lau. He is not doing this anymore with us because he doesn't believe that we're really going to repent. And we just keep thinking he's going to pull us out. And again, let's go back to parenting, right? At some point, you want to teach your kids right from wrong, and they say, oh, I'm sorry, and I shouldn't have done that. At what point are you enabling the bad behavior when you don't let them get punished or pay the price for what they've done? Lying, cheating, whatever it is. This comes through all the time. It's the same themes. It's the same things, personal or peoplehood-wise, the exact same things. And that's the beauty of the Tanach, the beauty of this book that I'm so happy now that many Christians have rediscovered. It was never gone. It was just kind of shunted aside in favor of a different book. And it's time to get back to the Tanach for everybody. And as part of that, I had the opportunity during this last week of also speaking with Rav Benny Lau, who comes from a very esteemed rabbinic family, but he gave a couple of lessons this week, and I was really privileged to be in the class with him and to hear some of the wisdom that he had to share. But I was also, he graciously gave me a few minutes of his time to talk about a program that is now entering another cycle, 929, which is learning the Bible, learning the Tanach, a chapter a day. That's what 929 is. I'll let you hear the explanation in his own words. But the reason that I wanted to interview him about this is because it's now in English, which means that for many of you out there who unfortunately don't know Hebrew, because there really is no replacement for learning Tanakh in Hebrew. When you do it, you see words repeat themselves, you see phrases repeat themselves, that when you see that, like Hashem walked with us, right, which happens also in the Garden of Eden, happens in other places, then you know that there's a connection between those stories. All right, the Torah talks to us between the lines all the time, but you don't really know it unless you know the Hebrew. So once again, I'm going to really emphasize that if you can at all, to learn Hebrew and to really be able to try and, read the Tanakh in Hebrew. But until that day happens and you can do that, then programs like this one of Rav Benny Lau of 929 can at least have you be exposed to it in English. Because it's not just interesting times. We're at very dangerous times here in humanity. We have so many choices that we have to make. And it's very hard to know. And again, coming back to that, it's easy to be angry at your enemy, right? That's like a no-brainer. Right? That's clear. These people hate me. These people want to destroy my country. These people want to kill my children. Not only do I not need to like them, but I need to protect myself from them. And if they attack me, I need to attack them back. All right. But what's happened here today, and that's clear. What's happened here today, though, is the muddle, is the out of context. It's the not being clear who the enemy and who the friend is. And not everybody is a 100% enemy, and very few people are 100% friends, right? So again, we have that whole idea of mutual interest that we'll talk about with Saudi Arabia and Israel, right? Not friends, but have mutual interest, and that's all fine. And we have the painful situation of Jews who are doing whatever they can to undermine and endanger Israel, and that's, another side of that, and that's all in there. And so we need to try and take everything into its context, which, as you know, I'm a maniac about context. I mean, just take a look at the news these days. So if you see the headline, IDF kills boy with kite, you'd be like, what? How can that be? How can this terrible soldier of the Israeli army kill a little boy with a kite? If you don't have the context that the last 3 months, there have been burning kites with also explosive devices that are being sent over from Gaza into Israel, and I'm sure you all know this, and burning fields and endangering lives and landing in synagogues and hurting and all these things that really, just because we, A, miracles, but B, also the Iron Dome and being able to protect ourselves hasn't involved a much bigger loss of life. But you know what? Loss of property and the damage that it's done to the environment and to bees that got, honeycombs that you know what I'm talking about, beehives that got destroyed, and a whole like ecosystem of food and animals. So obviously that's not as high level as people being hurt, but that's also tremendous damage. We're all the environmentalists here. Like, what's going on here? So again, if you see that headline with no context, be like, huh. And a lot of what's happening in the world is contextless. And people who don't know anything, whether willfully or just because they're stupid or they don't want to know, okay, or they haven't been exposed to it, that's what's happening, and people are coming out with the wrong conclusions. Now, before I go into the interview with Benny Lau, I just do want to mention an article that our very own Yishai Fleischer wrote about, to some degree, defending, and I think it was in the foreword, you guys can find it. Yishai's good about getting his stuff out there to all of you. Defending to a certain degree those birthrighters who walked off, and I'll agree with him to a certain point. I understand why they did it, and I have had personal conversations with some of these people who are like at the head of If Not Now, where, they say like, we were lied to. We grew up and we were told that Israel was so wonderful and so perfect, and then we found out Israel's flaws. Now, I happen to agree with their angst on that point. That is a very, very, very big mistake that the early Zionists made, and it was probably as a response to some of the helplessness and some of the things that came out of the Holocaust years, to justify what we did here, and and say that the War of Independence was a justified war, which it was. The War of Independence was a completely justified war in 48, 49. We didn't want to fight it. We accepted the partition plan. We would have been very happy to just have a little state, even share Jerusalem, be internationalized, not even share it, just have it be internationalized, not under our control. And only when war was waged against us did we have that War of Independence. So it was completely justified, but bad things happen in the war. Yes, because war is messy. All right? There's no such thing as a clean war. And one more time, if we want to go back to the message on that, just open your Tanach. The Tanach makes it really, really clear how many people, and innocent people, die in wars. So that's why the idea here, at least my great idea, would be to avoid the wars, to be strong enough so that we don't have a war. Because once you get into a war, things will happen that are out of your control. People will do things that they shouldn't or ordinarily wouldn't do, but we can't judge any of them, because when you are in a life-threatening situation, you're going to do what you can to get out of it. All right, so I blame the people who bring us into the wars for all the travesties that happen in the wars. And I blame Hamas for the Arab children that are dying in Gaza. Of course I feel badly for them. I don't want any children to die, but I didn't create that situation. All right, so we need to also know, not just look at a situation, but also understand who's responsible for that situation. Okay, but a lot of the ways that some of us did learn about Israel, and what the Birthright people do have a point at saying about, is it's not all rose-colored glasses, and it's not. And I think it's a mistake to present Israel, for those people who do it, with all of its just the good side. That's not how I guide. That's not how I live. All right, there are plenty of flaws and problems in Israeli society, like there are in every other society. And what should be done, and this is, I think, what Yishai's point was, I'm not sure he made it strongly enough, is that we need to deal with Judea and Samaria. The fact that Birthright, for the most part, does not come into Judea and Samaria. The fact that federations or other major Jewish organizations do not come into Judea and Samaria, do not give their money here, do not make it part of the groups that they run, kind of like ignore it, like dance around the elephant in the living room, is part of the problem that we're having here. And so you have some of these kids, most of whom I believe now have nefarious motives, but not all of them, and maybe initially not. Okay, but that's where it went, to say, whoa, 1 second, not everything is great, and we need to hear about the other side. We absolutely do need to hear about the other side. But that doesn't mean walking off a trip and then going and sitting in Hebron and hanging with the Hamas Arabs there. Sorry. It also means putting into the itinerary visits to Jews in Yehuda v'Shamron. All right, because what happened was they said, oh, We haven't been told the story, and now we're going to go and see what's happening with the occupation, blah, blah, blah. And on a certain level, they are right that they weren't told the whole story. And and I'm going to blame here my government and maybe specifically some of the leadership in Judea and Samaria and some of the people, maybe some of you who are listening, who are pro the Jewish life in Judah v'Shomron, pro-settlement, if you were, pro-people living here, but have not done enough to make sure that that gets out there. There can be extension programs to these birthright trips. So what happens is that the so-called leftists, so-called liberals, they add their extension where they take people, okay, now you learned about Israel, now let's show you the terrible things that Israel's done that they didn't show you on Birthright. Let's take you into Ramallah, like, ooh, they've got a secret that nobody knows. Let's take you into Ramallah, where of course they don't put anything in context either, to Ramallah and to Hebron, and show you what Israel's trying to hide. Okay? There's other things that unfortunately have been hidden, maybe due to a lack of budget or a lack of wanting to grapple with it, which is the Jewish narrative of what's happening here in Yudav Shomron. So I'm saying, let's open it all up. All right? You want to do your birthright and then come? You want to talk to some Arabs? Terrific. I've got no problem with you talking to the Arabs here. Hear their narrative, okay? But also come and talk to me. Also come to talk to me. Because I am part of the indigenous people here in the land, okay? And to get back to the law, right, that Israel is a Jewish nation, Israel is the state of the Jewish nation, and oh my goodness, what does that mean for Arabic? And I read some of the talkbacks on this. But Arabic was being spoken before Hebrew, and therefore they've got the real right to be the language of the land. Really, the only reason that Arabic was spoken here before Hebrew is because the Arabs came here 1,300 years ago and slaughtered everybody that was here and either forcibly or not so forcibly imposed their culture, language, and religion on the people here. The real indigenous people here to this land are mine. And the real indigenous language to this land is the one that I speak when I'm not on the radio thing, and that is Hebrew. All right, so you can start history wherever you want to start it, and you can try and cover this up, and you can try and cover that up. And what I'm saying is, it's time for no cover-ups. All right, there is no one truth. There are a lot of different narratives, and there is no one truth. And Israel and the Jews have done things wrong, but I think that we've done less wrong than everybody else. And that isn't out there. And again, I will, to a great degree here, put the onus on the people on my side of the camp who I don't think have made enough effort, be it monetarily or PR-wise or whatever it is, over the years in order to make our case. And the real bottom line goes with the Israeli governments, all of them, left, right, and center, who haven't had the guts or whatever it takes to finally put sovereignty, Jewish sovereignty, on Judea and Samaria. So we can look back at that long ago sin of the tourist spies, and we can say, where was their faith? They had just seen all the miracles. Where was their faith? And we can say that about 1967. We saw the miracle of the 6-Day War. Where was our faith in saying, wow, we got this in 6 days? The Khartoum conference a few months later, that the Arabs don't want it, no to peace, no to recognition, no to negotiation. Where was our faith in not saying, then it's ours? It's not that this law should not have been passed. This law should have been passed a long time ago, and it definitely should include Yudav Shomron, Judea and Samaria. So we've got a lot to do. And I apologize to you guys for there was just so much in my brain that I just wanted to talk to you all about and get you thinking about this. There are no easy answers, and anybody who thinks that belongs in the Garden of Eden in a childhood where there are no decisions that have to be made. But since we are all long out of the Garden of Eden, I would imagine, and understanding that the difficulty in adulthood is in deciding right from wrong. But get out there, and if there's something that you believe is right, then get out. You just cannot keep it to yourself. All right? Because the world needs, what do they say? The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. So there's too many indifferent people out there. There's a lot of people out there who are indifferent to Judaism, and I don't know if their grandchildren are going to be Jewish, and that's a heartbreak for me on every level. They're indifferent to God. All right? There's a lot of people out there who are indifferent to God. So those of us who aren't indifferent to him and who see ourselves as part of a very, very big picture cannot just leave the stage to those who are working very hard to undermine all of this. We have to get in there, and that is our challenge in our lifetimes. Hashem is out there, and Hashem, as I've said so many times, He'll help us the way He helped Joshua, but first Joshua went in. And He'll help us the way He helped us in the Six-Day War, but our pilots were in the cockpits. Are we doing everything that we're supposed to be doing in every single way that we can? I don't know. And hopefully this will be the last 9th of Av that's a fast day, and that's a day of mourning. And hopefully in this next year, which could be a tremendous year for the globe, in a good way or in a bad way, lots of things happening out there. And where are we as individuals in this? Okay, so I'm doing my best here. I know I can do a whole lot better, and I'm happy to take you guys' suggestions, and you can write to me and disagree with me and agree with me, and let's figure out how we can open up people's hearts and minds and not keep the secrets. That's the message of the Torah. Put it all out there. Okay, and then deal with it. Because when we don't, and we try and hide it, it comes out eventually, and then it comes out in a way that's out of our control and in a bad way. And that is all of our responsibilities. Eve Harrow, Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network, going into a few minutes with Rav Benny Lau, talking about 929. I'll be right back. Okay, Ben, if you can put in now Rav Benny, and now I'll do the outtake. I hope you all enjoyed that short interview with Rav Benny Lau, and that you take the time to go into the website 929. It doesn't have to be every day. That would be the ideal, but we are at the beginning of the cycle, so this is a great time to start. But whatever Tanach you learn, and whatever you choose to learn and incorporate into your life, and incorporate the lessons of that into the bigger picture of the world today, I think that's the points of the whole program. Take care, everybody. Once again, thanks to Ben and to Tabitha. Eve Harrow, Rejuvenation, Eve at thelandofisrael.com. Take care, everybody. Goodbye for now. Hi, everybody. Eve Harrow. You're listening to Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. I am towards the end of one of my favorite weeks of the year, the days of learning, during the 9 days to come to Alon Shvut, to Har Etzion, and learn Torah on tremendous level from some of the best teachers that we have in the country. So I'm very honored and privileged to be sitting with Rav Benny Lau, whom I just was in a Torah lesson with him, and in a few minutes going into a different one, from a very esteemed rabbinic family, chief rabbis of Israel, all over the place, but he himself is a leader of a very important initiative, and in the very few minutes that he has today, that's really what I wanted the focus to be on. So, Rav Benny, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, and I first of all should say that this day is 9 days before Tisha B'Av, before the destruction of the temple, the first time, second time, is used to be the sadness days in the year. Here in Alon Shvut, in Gush Etzion, become the most, not just happy days, but with a full of energy that something happened to the people of Israel, like the redemption. We can feel that thousand people come all over the country just for one reason, to use this book, learning Torah. It's unbelievable. And when we are talking about return back, the idea of the nation, Am Yisrael, return back to the land, we know that all the prophets talked about that. All the prophets dreamed about that. We have the privilege, and I'm shocked to say that, but our generation, we are the only generation in the whole history of the Jewish people have the privilege to see this window happen, that the nation return back not just to the land, but also to the language. To speak Hebrew, to read the Bible with the original language, to understand every word sensitively, to understand because it's our language. This is part of the whole journey of returning. And I'm specific, I have the privilege to lead a very, very special project called 929. 929 is a secret number. The number is the chapters in the Bible from side to side. If we start in the first book and in the 24th book of the Bible, connect all of them, all the books. We have 929 chapters, and I started 4 years ago a project, a very special one, who said, let's join together learning or reading one chapter a day, 5 days a week, 20 chapters a month, 3.5 years, to do a journey, people together with all spectrum. Mean, if you are secular, if you are religious, if you believe by that or by that, never mind who are you, but you are sharing the Bible. The Bible is something can connect us. Can it connect us mean all the people in the world. Never mind who are you. You have the image of God. The image of God, this is a basic of the human being. And we, the Jewish people, with all the people in the world, have the Old Testament, have the Bible. And the Bible can build us. It can raise us to better position of the human being in the world, to learn from all the history. By learning that chapter after chapter, day after day, in 3.5 years, we felt, after 3.5 years, that we are in a better position. So we did that, and last week we finished the first cycle with 270,000 Israelis, and 250,000 who all voices, all ideas, all kinds of people going and sharing together the same path. Now we started this week, in the 15th of July, we started the second cycle, but also in English. So if people who listen to these words can open, just Google the word 929, the numbers 929. Immediately they will find themselves in a site. One site is Hebrew, one site is in English. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs lead the English version with many voices, many ideas. The idea is to make the journey larger, to invite all people around the world to read with us, chapter a day, together, the Tanach.
So I became exposed to, I've known for Rav Benny Lau for a long time, but I was part of a course last year, some of you might remember, Hishtalmut Tanach, like a review course of the Tanach specifically for tour guides. And on the first day, Rav Benny came to speak to us because he was also part of initiating this course, and said that he was at one of the sessions where the soldiers get a gun and get a Tanakh and get a Bible. And he saw that at the end, when everybody had left the kotel or whatever it was after the ceremony, they took their gun, of course, and a lot of them left the Tanakh. And this really was like a dagger in my heart, because here we are in Israel, we've come back to our land and we know the land, and it seems that some people feel the book isn't theirs, but the book belongs to religious people. It's a religious book. It's not a practical book. It's not relevant for today, when it is so relevant today, even more than ever, the messages of leadership and how to behave with each other. And so I went into 929, and what was a little controversial about that is that it's not just rabbis or learned people who are giving their ideas on certain elements of the Tanakh, but you even have people giving comments who are maybe a politician or maybe someone who has a talk show, not necessarily someone that one would consider as part of the Torah world. How did that evolve to become part of the 929 program?
It's true. First of all, when we are talking about the days before Tisha B'Av, about the destruction of leaving the earth, leaving the land, and move to exile without any connection, not to the language, not to the land. This is the tragedy of the nation of Am Yisrael. Now we are in the back way. We are returned back, and the question is, can we return back not just to the land, not just to the language, but to the culture and to the connection. The Tanakh is the basic of everything. What happened in Israel in the last 50 years, the people who are not religious left slowly, they left the Tanakh because many reasons. I will not go to learn about the reasons, but it's happened. When we are watch in the last few years around and we see the story that you shared about the soldier is one simple, that people left the Tanakh and felt that it's not ours. Mm-hmm. Someone else is honor this book. And the idea of 9 to 9 project is to return the book to the people. Mean it's yours. It's not the dati. It's not just for the religious. It's not just for the academy. It's for each one of the people had this privilege of the heritage. It's yours. Just take your heritage. Take it and open it, and I will help you to read it. I will not read it for you. You will take your explanation, your interpretation, your belief. I will not give you my belief. If you want, I can. But take yours. Take yours belief, your point of view about the world, about the Judaism, and move with the book on. And by that, by invite people, not just push them, but invite them, they came. And this is the big thing about 9 to 9, that when you invite in the right way, people accept it. And now I can see 75% of the clients of reading 9 to 9 are secular. And it's not regular that secular people in Israel read Tanach. It will take in another cycle, another 3.5 years, that more and more people will feel comfortable with the book. In the end of the journey, it's without end, it's right. Endless. But when we finish few cycles, I believe that the Tanakh will return back to the central place of the Israeli society.
So this next cycle, which really just began this week, this next 3.5-year cycle, you put a tremendous amount of effort with no less than Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who my listeners know how much I value him and quote him all the time. It's in English. So that means you're already moving beyond the Hebrew-speaking population in Israel, and you're trying to get out there to reach the world. I would say not just English-speaking Jews, but perhaps other people, perhaps Christians. I have many Christian listeners who are, I'm realizing, slowly understanding that this book is theirs as well. It is not, again, just for the Jewish people. This book was brought down for humanity, as a template for humanity. And English opens it up really to the entire world. So what are you anticipating that you're going to be seeing now, the kind of feedback that you are going to be seeing now that it has become almost a universal kind of program, 929, and not just an Israeli program?
You know, when I open the Sefer Tehillim, Psalms, I find one of the shortest chapters in the Bible, very, very small one, actually two psukim, 2 sentences, the whole chapter. It's called Hallelu et Adonai kol goyim, shabechuhu kol ha'umim, ki gavar aleinu chasdo. Mean, the song said, may the whole people around the world, the whole Gentiles, the whole people without any connection to Judaism, the other people, the whole human being will stand and say, wow, we want to say thanks to God. About what? Ki gavar aleinu chasdo. When they will see the Jewish people return back to the land, when they will see Israel strong, when they will see what's happened here to the Jewish people in their own land, they will stand and say thanks to God. This is the chapter. Very small one, very strong one. And when we share 9 to 9 with the whole people around, Christian, Muslims, all people, we said, just look, the idea of Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah. We, the Jewish people, return back. We build our home. We build our, should say, not just state, but the kingdom of the Jewish people. And you, the whole people around, should take part of that. You shouldn't be enemy for that. You should be proud that the sons of God return back to the home land and the holy land. And from here, from Zion, we bring the Tanach, the Bible, the words of God, to the whole people over the world.
The fact that the Jewish people came back to Israel is a sign of God in the world.
It is a miracle, and everyone with eyes can see that. It's happened like a miracle, and I believe that Christian and Muslims, I know the whole politician, people think that the world against Israel. It's not true. It's not true. There are people against Israel, but the majority look and listen and understand, especially people who believe by God. People understand that something happened here. It's not normal. It's not regular. It's a miracle. And because that, we want to share this voice with all the human beings around the world.
It seems that the people who are against Israel maybe are against God.
I believe so. If you believe by God, you can't be against Israel.
So 929, people just Google 929 and they can come in and they can, what happens? They get an email every day, they go in on their own.
Sign yourself. First of all, you can do it by your own. You can, of course, it's free. It's open for everyone. So far, it's just Hebrew and English. Maybe later on we'll do it in different languages, but it's free and it's open, and you can choose what voice that you like. You can say, I want that and not that. You can say, I want both of them. It's like a buffet. Just choose and eat.
So any teachers and parents are teachers anyway, who are listening, this is something that you can work into your family life, you can work into your curriculum in the schools. The cycle is just starting now. The Tanach is too valuable and too precious of a book to just be left to certain sectors and not to others. And what Rav Benny Lau is doing here with a tremendous team as well, and also with the support of the education ministry, is this true?
Exactly. So first of all, it's an invitation to everyone, but especially for parents and kids, because parents want to find few minutes, something effectively, something with the power to raise the kids. And we do it with the technology. We do it in the mobiles. We do it in the area that the kids are always being there. So we take the situation that kids are staying with the mobile, staying with the sites, and we went there, and from there we invite the parents to be with the kids and learning Bible together.
Okay, thank you so much, Rav Benny Lau. And everybody, I can't recommend it enough. 929. Eve Hero Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel. I'll be right back.
One of the rockets fell right by the house.
Josh Hasten here, host of Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Tune into my show this week for an exclusive interview with Rabbi Dov Fendel, the head of the Hesder Yeshiva in the town of Sderot. Just over the weekend, over 200 rockets and projectiles fired at southern Israel.
The Palestinians are trying their best to make this place into a ghost town. We're not going to let them. They're trying to break our spirit. They don't realize it's invincible, unbreakable. Thousands